And video game violence. What kind of impact do video games have on our kids?
VTV News at 5 with Mi Jung Lee.
Good evening, I'm Sonia Nordal-Curry. Mi Jung is off tonight.
Arrives in the weekend, looks wet at this point, Sonia, but the good news for the skiers is the snow level should be coming back down on the weekend.
Not bad, thanks so much. Some sunshine, but of course a fog will cover that up in the morning. That's a shame. Coming up after the break, first at 5. Tonight, video game controversy. Do violent games mean violent kids? A new graduate thesis says yes, but what does the video game industry think? That's coming right up. Welcome back. Tonight on First at 5, video games and kids. It appears we live in an increasingly violent society. Some say the preponderance of violent video games may be a contributing factor. And now an SFU grad student says there is some proof that violent video games means violent kids.
Do you know where your kids are? They could be playing video games. And if you're a parent, you may be interested in what Brent Stafford has to say. For his master's thesis, this SFU graduate student decided to examine the video game industry and the effect it's having on children. And in this hour-long documentary titled Insert Coin, Stafford went straight to the source.
Who would say then that video games are addictive?
Kids are reporting they feel addicted to games. And that's really important to focus on because it's what the kids are telling us.
And kids who are playing video games are not only feeling addicted, they're becoming more isolated and are numb to shockingly violent scenes.
It makes you have a goal and stuff to hurt the person. Hurt them harder. Because like normally it would be like either racing or hurting on a person, because what else would you have?
The evidence lies with the children, according to Stafford. At the age of 7, this young boy knows which weapons are more effective to kill with, learned from a video game.
There's a chainsaw, there's a handgun, there's a super shotgun, and the normal shotgun.
In the meantime, the video game industry, which pulls in $17 billion a year, is making it more difficult for parents to monitor what their children are watching. Brent Stafford has some advice.
What you have to do is you have to do more than look at the box. You have to do more than watch the first 5 minutes of a game. Because games never get really good until you start really getting deep into the game. So if you're concerned about what your kids are playing and you want to know what they're playing, wait till they've been playing the game for a while and then watch what they're playing.
Now, more than ever, it seems this is the time to watch what your children are playing. Lisa Rossington, VTV News.
So with more on this, joining us now, Brent Stafford, who of course created the documentary, The Culture of Video Gameplay. Brent shot, wrote, edited, narrated, and produced the project as a master's thesis in communication. Stafford spent 2 years on the story and shot about 80 hours of video. Also joining us, Quinn Duffy. Quinn is a video game designer. He works at Relic Entertainment. He's been working in the video game industry for the last 5 years and has spent the last 2 working on Relic. Currently, he's the lead designer of a new game that isn't out in stores quite yet. So there's the background, and I'll start with you, Brent. We were talking about it in the newsroom earlier. What do you think video games violent, but what about TV and movies? Do you think it's different if it's an interactive source?
The research out of SFU, led by Dr. Stephen Klein, really shows that video games do have a greater impact when it comes to desensitization, because the thing is that they're more interactive. The kids are interacting with the play experience. They're the ones that are deciding to pull the trigger. They're the ones that are deciding, to kill somebody. So it makes the experience a little bit more problematic than just absorbing something when you're watching television or film.
Brent, as a person who designs these games for the industry, what are your thoughts on the thesis?
Well, I don't think we can deny that...
Sorry, Quinn, pardon me.
Sorry, that video games are occasionally violent, that they do have these effects on children, but I think what we need to do is examine the role of video games within a wider societal context, that video games are still a relatively small market compared to television or movies. I think the effects of those media forms are probably far greater reaching.
Why do you think, though, that so many video games have the shoot 'em up aspect? Could you make a popular video game that wasn't based on violence?
Oh, absolutely. I think if you look at the top-selling video games in, say, over the past decade or so, many of them are completely non-violent. They're adventure games, simulations, sports simulations. The violent video games make up a small subsection of the overall video game market. I think they are an issue, but in the big scheme of things, people are typically playing non-violent games as opposed to violent games.
I have to respond to that because the industry's own statistics show that the majority of games, the popular genres are fighting games, shooting games, even action games have some level of violence that are a part of the game experience, what's called gameplay. So I'm a little suspect about that because the reason why so many games are violent is because violence sells. And in my documentary, I've got this great bite from this young man who loves video games. And when I, pose a question to him, well, what about, could you not have violence in video games? And he's just like, well, what else would you have? You'd have racing games.
What would the point be?
And then there'd be fighting games. What goals would there be?
Go ahead.
I think we also have to look at demographics as well. Obviously, young children want a lot of action, whereas the older game players are more interested in problem solving, puzzle solving, and things like that. We do have a responsibility to provide information on the products. Obviously, the software industry has a regulation system, much like the movie industry, where games are labeled with violent content or so on. And
Brent, do you think that's a good start, labeling them and having parents having some control, or do you think it's?
Well, there's a problem with that. For one, that was instituted in the early 90s as a solution to the U.S. Senate putting a big push on the industry, and basically they left it to the industry to voluntarily monitor it, which doesn't seem to be working because they're getting more violent.
Unfortunately, we have to end it there. Thank you both so much for coming in. Quinn, Brent, appreciate it very much. Coming up next on VTV News at 5, Vancouver Living. Do you know a budding child actor? Find out the do's and don'ts of this booming BC industry. Stay with us.